It's hard for me to understand, being a pastor, how people who once lived for the Lord and loved the Lord could all of a sudden, like Peter of old, turn away from the Lord and even deny they know him. How can that possibly be? Well, I tell you, it starts with this matter of discouragement that's caused by doubt and departing from the Lord, and then ultimately just hardened hearts through the deceitfulness of sin. And sin is very deceitful. Brother Wicks would remember a story, the family in our church, the Oderkirk family back in Minnesota. They were farmers and had a very successful farm. And Sam Oderkirk and Tilly had several brawny boys in their family. And Sam was always a kind of a can-do kind of a guy. One day, Sam decided he was going to put up a big grain leg on his farm. Now, a grain leg, if I'm not maybe using the right term, your pastor can correct me on that, but it's a tall elevator type thing that takes grain from the wagon up and takes it over into the elevator. But it's a long, tall thing, maybe as much as 40, 50 feet high. It's a big, has to be very tall. So Sam had the idea he could rig up a cable on that grain leg on a tractor, and using a little bit of a prop, he would pull that thing up with a tractor and get it in place. Well, his oldest boy, Rolf, said, and I got all this from the dad later, he said, Rolf said to me, Dad, you're going to kill somebody. That is not going to work. You're going to, that whole thing just doesn't sound good to me. And so Sam Oderkirk, when Rolf kept going, he said, Rolf, I'll tell you what you do. You just go ahead and go back home, and then we'll get this thing up. What Sam knew, and by the way, he did get it up, and Rolf did go home, but Sam knew that one person standing around said, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it, was going to destroy the whole thing. Isn't that what happened to the spies? They sent the spies into the promised land, into Canaan land to check it out. 10 came back and said, we can't do it, we can't do it, can't do it. What was the result of that? The entire nation followed those spies and said, we can't do it after all. The problem with discouragement and doubt is that it's infectious. It begins to affect other people. So that's why the Bible says, beware lest any of you be hardened through deceitfulness of sin. And he gives us a responsibility to each other. Pastor is challenging the church this week, this year, in the matter of encouraging, helping other people, being a helper in other ways. Well, this is the problem we all need to do, because we all need to be encouragers to each other. Now, there's reasons for that. Why does a person need encouragement? Well, first of all, if you don't know it, if you're a Christian, you're in a battle. You have an enemy, and you are a soldier in the conflict. And anytime a person's in a conflict, a constant conflict, a constant battle, he's going to be prone to get discouraged. Someone said this, every person whom God has used mightily has experienced some times of severe discouragement. Now that would tell me that probably if every person here would be honest, we would have to say that there have been some times in my life when I truly have been some discouragement, had to experience some discouragement. And brethren, that's why you and I need each other. We need to have this ministry of encouragement to help others in times when they are discouraged, because we're all in a battle. If the Apostle Paul could be discouraged, I think any of us could find ourselves in that position. Let me read to you what Paul had to say in 2 Corinthians chapter 7. He said, when we were coming to Macedonia, our flesh had no rest. We were troubled on every side, but without were fightings, within were fears. Nevertheless, God that comforteth, and there's the same word he used that was used back in Hebrews chapter 3. That word parakaleo, comforts us. Those that are cast down, comforted us by the coming of Titus, and not by his coming only, but by the consolation, another word, same word, translated different by a different word, wherewith he was comforted in you, when he told us your earnest desire, your mourning, your fervent mind toward me, so that I rejoiced the more. Paul said, I went through a hard time. Our souls were cast down. We were discouraged. And then came along Titus, and he helped us get back on our feet. Oh, I tell you for sure, as I spoke to the staff this afternoon, we talked about David's testimony. I love the Lord because he has kept my feet from falling. I want to tell you that I am a benefactor of many, many people in my life and in the ministry of our ministry that have kept my feet from falling. So many times have I needed the encouragement of others. It became so real to me that at the advice of another pastor, I formed an encouragement file. Anytime anybody wrote me a kind note, I put it in the file. Anytime anybody wrote me a nasty note, I threw it away. I didn't want to see it. But I wanted to keep the encouraging notes. And I have for all these years, almost 50 years now, kept that file and let it build because every once in a while it helps me to go back and get encouraged. Why? Because we're in a battle. By the way, we also have an enemy. And the enemy knows that the greatest way to stop the work of God is to stop the leadership from being encouraged, to help them be discouraged. So if the devil can discourage leadership, he can stop the growth of the work of God. Sunday school teachers, bus workers, whatever, pastors, staff members, if they can get discouraged, then the devil's got us right where he wants us. He doesn't have to lead us into immorality or financial mismanagement or anything like that. All he has to do is discourage us, and the work will not go forward. So we have a responsibility. And the reason we find ourselves somewhat discouraged is because we have an enemy, we're fighting a battle, and, might I also say, we are human. The problem with humans is we fail sometimes. We just blow it. And there's nobody that knows that more than I do, and nobody can feel that discouragement more keenly than the guy that feels like, I just did the wrong thing. I just blew it. I should have done something different. I didn't do it. And I'm just discouraged. Because we're human, we sometimes can get very discouraged. Now, what I'm telling you tonight, brethren, is that the devil knows all that. And his most effective tool is to get us into a place where we're beginning to doubt the goodness of God, and we get a little discouraged. Well, what's the answer to that whole thing? Well, the Bible tells us what the answer is right there in verse 12. It says, verse 13, exhort one another daily, while it is called today. Exhort one another daily. I don't know when the last time your pastor was, I think, greatly encouraged, and I just had the opportunity to observe all this, but I know what it meant for people to say kind things and to write kind notes and to send nice cards, and I know what an encouragement that is. And I don't know if he keeps an encouragement file, but I bet it's bursting now because it's a great thing. But tomorrow's a new day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next year, and so forth. And I wonder how many of us really ever take the time to write a staff member who is doing something that encourages our hearts, a Sunday school teacher, a person that maybe is going through a difficult time, a widow lady, someone just to tell them that, you're a blessing to me, a note of encouragement, a word of encouragement. Now you can text encouraging things. That's what I'm saying. It's all a responsibility we have to exhort one another daily to encourage each other. Now you don't have to. You can just sit there and just let people kind of come and go and do as they will, but don't point your finger at somebody when they get discouraged and start missing church and dropping out if you haven't done something to encourage them. When somebody's starting to miss, we have a responsibility to each other. Somebody gets discouraged, we have a responsibility. May God help us with that.